a couple of messages. One of the messages is related to what I do and how it relates to space systems. And then the other is what people do, to become aerospace engineers or astronauts. So I believe that this is very important, and I think it is growing in importance in the kingdom, and that you will be the actors of the growth of the kingdom in space activities. So I will share my screen, and I would like dear Nouran maybe to allow screen sharing with me. I think this is, you must have a special button to do that.
Yes, of course, right away.
Very good. Thank you so much. So I will now go into presentation mode, and we will see what happens. I'm looking at the wrong screen. Let me try again. So what I wanted to see was this, something named desktop 2. This is weird. I seem to be getting a small perturbation. Let's see. I'm going to try again. Something strange happens. It's as if my screen share was sharing the wrong screen. Give me 1 second, if you don't mind. This is weird. No, I don't want this. I don't want to share that screen. It's as if this new screen I just bought, we're very happy to sort of steal the show from me. I am changing, I am doing a small change, and let's see if now things work. Again, my apologies for this. Okay, so I think we're now in business. This is my slide. This is the full slide. This is perfect. Does everybody see my presentation screen? Hello, can I just get a confirmation?
Yes, I see
Yes,
it.
we can.
Got
Okay.
it.
Very good. Thank you very much. So the title of my presentation is Going Up the Ladder to Space, One Step at a Time. And really what I want to give you is some idea about what people do at what age when they get into space machinery and in general aerospace. I am a professor in the Robotics, Intelligent Systems and Control Laboratory at the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. And I got to meet with your president, Nouran Al-Yousef, as I was having a nice interaction with King Abdulaziz City of Science and Technology, KAXT, which is located in Riyadh. And I must say that I literally grabbed the occasion to meet with all of you. As I said, I believe that you are the future of space in the kingdom. So let me sort of tell you a little bit about my basic education as one possible way to become eventually somebody who works in space systems. So it's mostly math and physics. I did math and physics in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, in my entire undergraduate school. And then finally, in grad school, I added a little bit of a variation on it, which is I added computer science. And then eventually in graduate school, I finally entered aerospace engineering. So when you see this, you're tempted to believe that what I did was mostly extremely nerdy activities from my very young age, say starting age 7, until I got my PhD at age 26. Nevertheless, the reality is slightly different, meaning that while I ate my greens and did a lot of math and physics throughout, and really then went on to grad school to do research, I never stopped doing other things. So, for example, I have always been involved with a variety of activities, all of which taught me a lot of things about what I would call real life. So I was building model trains, and all this was encouraged by my parents, of course. And I also started building model boats. The little train that you see here, this little locomotive, I always loved because it was like orange and red. And I certainly learned a lot about, if I may say, practical physics by having this locomotive, which was rather fast, take very sharp turn, and understand that if you take too sharp a turn, the locomotive rolls over. I also exchanged the polarization of the electric motors that would power this locomotive. So I would have two locomotives going in opposite directions. And I could certainly also measure the power of collisions between moving objects, seeing them literally explode. I also bought and built from scratch little radio control boats. That's one example of what I've built. And I would take that little boat to a basin pretty much every other weekend, and with a very old radio system. At the time, it was not that old, but now it is. I was able to understand a lot about radio transmission on the one hand, and also noise coming from the motor into the radio control system on the other hand. And of course, certain issues such as my boat almost sinking when I attached a hook to it. I dragged the hook with a piece of cheese attached to it. And then one of those very big fish grabbed the thing and started dragging the whole thing backwards. I must say I got very lucky because as far as my initiation to aerospace is concerned, well, I had a grandpa who was a fan of aviation. So in the 1930s, you see this grandpa that I outlined with my mouse was wearing a very distinguished suit and was flying the airplane that was right behind him. Okay, so that was his airplane. And I still don't understand how he managed to buy such a beautiful machine. Well, I guess he was a very good doctor. And I didn't know about his flying an airplane, but he gave us a good taste of what it is to go fast, because he also had later on in his life a beautiful Ford Mustang that that he took us into just to show what a sports car could look like. Interestingly enough, another source of inspiration was a Catholic priest. This Catholic priest was actually as much a pilot as he was a priest. And he was a glider pilot, and he was teaching us how to build model aircraft from the very basic onwards. So we start with like the basic wood, and we would learn how to cut all the parts in order to get a very nice all-wood glider whose wings would be covered with beautiful silk. And so the silk was really what made the whole machine fly. And the silk was varnished very carefully by him. He would not trust us, so that it would become airproof. I got also very lucky that my parents bought me once a telescope. It was a 115/900 telescope. It's among the cheaper kind of telescopes you can find on the market. But with that, I was able to start doing a few other things like photography and other things like that. So as you see, I had a very diverse background that added a few other things that would be very useful to me later on, including sailing. Sailing a lot on very small boats like Optimists. So these are pretty much ubiquitous. I'd be very surprised if you couldn't find one of those in Saudi. And then increasingly larger boats. This was a boat that my father bought in the early 1980s. And this boat was a boat that I sailed and raced with another member of my family. That taught me a lot about how airplanes fly, because airplanes fly the same way as boats sail. And then I also had other very practical activities, including being an officer on a surface warship and then on an underwater warship. So these elements came as a very useful complement to what would be otherwise very mathematical and very physical schoolwork. Okay, so that allowed me not to be a complete nerd. The last thing I did, and I went to school for, was to become a private pilot. The airplane you see to the left is the very airplane where I spent most of my time flying, making also big mistakes. And but it was a fun airplane to fly. It was named a Piper Tomahawk. I'm sure it still exists. It had very nice blue colors. And that led me to finally obtaining my certificate to fly a private aircraft in a recreational manner in the United States. What did that give me? Well, when I learned how to fly this thing, it really gave me some kind of training, so that when I was teaching at MIT, I could talk to aerospace pilots, and especially pilots, as if I knew a little bit about what they're going through, as opposed to just talk about it in a purely theoretical manner. Are we doing okay so far?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody understand what I'm saying, or would you like me to speak slower?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jory. Thank you, Yazan. And feel free to interrupt me during this discussion. I mean, so far, do you have any questions?
No, everything's clear. Thank you.
So what I want is to tell you that as far as my personal experience is concerned, I should say that, again, while I did this lots of math and lots of physics and schoolwork throughout maybe the 23, 24 first years of my life, I was also busy learning how to operate things. By the way, I've never been a good sailor, and I've never been a good aircraft pilot. So my purpose was really to learn how it was to fly these things, how to operate these things. I was also very bad in the submarine, I should add. But at least I learned a few things about what I would call the real life of the people. And I would sort of again learn about it for the purpose of getting a better grasp of the issues that the people I worked with were facing. And of course, I hope you're not without noticing that the submarine one was actually interesting from the viewpoint of my learning about missiles. Missiles are the ancestors of rockets. The first the first rocket that took off from the United States was built and designed by Wernher von Braun, who is a very famous person as one of the pioneers of rocketry, but started by making the famous V2 missile in Germany. That would be the first, also the first rocket that people believed was a rocket. So let me tell you now some of the projects I've been able to undertake with all this kind of training. I'm a university professor. I have been working at a variety of places, and I would begin with MIT. So the first project I consider to be genuinely sort of aerospace, if I may say, was what's called the first autonomous aerobatic helicopter. How did that go? Well, again, I went to see the people who do it. And this is what I saw back in 1998. Is the video coming across okay on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, so I was able to see this person do that. And I was totally amazed. I thought, well, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. How can somebody do that? These machines are 5 kilograms at the time. And by now it's become easier to fly them as machines have become electric. But however, I think it is still breathtaking. Who among you go to radio control airfields? Does anybody do that? Did anybody go see model aircraft? I hear silence. I have. Well, I'm not sure about the Riyadh area, but I know that in the Jeddah area, there are such fields where people fly these small machines. So I encourage you to take a look at this, because if you will, flying in the air is sort of a first and very easy step in order to eventually get into space. And the reason is because going to space is extremely expensive. Extremely expensive, whereas going into the air is much more affordable, and it takes much less time to start having a lot of the feelings that you can get by building space machines as well. Okay, in this particular case, what we did is we said, we're going to make that machine autonomous. Who has heard the word autonomous in your studies? Or maybe at home?
I have.
Yes, so Khaled, would you like to explain the context in which you've heard the word autonomous?
Well, autonomous can be used in many different contexts, but it mostly means like self, automatic, or it could be used in a context such as autonomous cars or autonomous vehicles.
Yes, absolutely, Khaled. What grade are you in?
I'm in 11th grade.
You're 11th grade, okay. So yes, absolutely. There is a big effort now spent on autonomy, and autonomy touches just about every part of what we do, and it's going to be more and more part of what we do. Here at KAUST, we also have started experimenting with an autonomous shuttle, meaning a little van that will stop at every bus stop that there is on campus, pick up passengers, and then move on. Okay, so what we did is I looked at what these pilots were able to do. I said, let me try and do that automatically or autonomously. Okay, I just was fascinated by this project. And what I'm going to show you here is a little video that we made that was made in 2003. You see that some people were a little bit afraid and they hide behind the car. But we have a machine here that actually does not take off automatically because we wanted to mostly do an air show. Let me see if I can lower the sound. And there will be a mix of autonomous flight, and then I will show you some camera views about where we were. So this machine was, you see, had a lot of electronics added to it, and a lot of electronics added to it, and that was in a box sitting under the helicopter. Okay, we also had a camera that allowed us to take some videos. Okay, and the interesting thing is that this machine was able not only to fly autonomously, but also do autonomous aerobatic maneuver. So here that was called a hammerhead maneuver. And let me lower the sound a little bit. There we go. And you see that now the machine did what we call a split S, which is the machine going on its back and then doing half a loop. And then we could see other things, for example, probably a roll at some point. No, we don't see it. The machine is just done flying and it's going to land soon. So that machine was the first of its kind capable of doing what I call aerobatic flight. And that was for us, first of all, the occasion for one of my PhD students to do something all on his own. If you will, these machines are very complex, and they give you, if you have the opportunity to work on them from beginning to the end, they give you a lot of very good training on, if I may say, the whole thing. Okay, so not only the system, but also how to build it and how to make all the parts work together properly. And what you saw was there was, of course, the flying machine that we put together, even though we bought it from a kit. But then there was also the box sitting underneath. I'm going to show it to you again. I'm going to just go a little bit. Sorry, I just wanted to. Okay, let's stop this one right here. You see, there's a box underneath. Okay, and that box was built from scratch. It contained all the electronics that would fly the helicopter, including a PC computer, a lot of antennas, an altimeter, a gyroscope, pretty much all the equipment that you see on modern aircraft and modern spacecraft. And what I want to say is that, again, the student had the most fun because he really worked on absolutely all aspects of this. Now you can compare that with building the machine all built together, and you can get some idea about what you may be losing by buying a machine that's all built. Today you can find tons of these little drones. Who flies drones here? Little drones you can find in the supermarkets or in computer stores. Does anybody do that? Who has heard about drones?
I have.
And but you don't have one?
No.
So you can now order from Amazon little drones that are no more than about maybe 15 centimeters wide. Okay, they have 4 cute little propellers, and you can find some for literally less than $20. Okay, and they're capable of doing marvelous things. If you're interested, as I said, in space, you are better. I mean, you are much better off by working with these machines that are in some ways the descendants of what I showed you, and that costs absolutely nothing. However, the downside of working with these little machines is they come all assembled, so you don't have necessarily the opportunity to sort of learn exactly how and why they fly so well, okay? So I recommend that you, if you want to go into space, you get your hands dirty as quickly as possible with these little machines. And I apologize, this is kind of the professor talking to you, but at least the professor talks to you by getting your hands dirty and fly out during the weekend, as opposed to eat your greens and do your homework during the week, okay? Another thing that we worked on while now I was at Georgia Tech is what we call zero gravity. So what is zero gravity flight? Zero gravity flight is trying to create, without going to space, the same conditions as if you were in space. That is creating a feeling of weightlessness inside an airplane. And for that purpose, what would happen is that the airplane would fly at some altitude, then engage into what's called a parabolic flight. And during that parabolic flight, that is when everybody inside feels as if they are weightless. And then the aircraft gets out of the parabola and then starts doing it again and again, about 15 times. You have such aircraft used in the United States of America, in Canada, in Europe. This is the zero-G machine used in Europe. And what you see is that it flies, but at orientations that you won't encounter when you fly commercially. It's something interesting to know that you can have a very, very big aircraft, such as a 777 or 787, and you can actually have them do things like this, where they're really behaving more like a rocket than an aircraft, and they can do that without braking at all, okay? Those zero-G aircraft, for some of you who might have enough money, you can actually buy your way into one of these zero-G aircraft. For example, the Zero-G Corporation in the US would be happy to have you on one of their aircraft for you to literally feel what it is to be in orbit. And to be absolutely precise, what I should say is that when the aircraft is doing this parabolic flight, it is actually in orbit, but it is in an orbit which is very small and that will hit the Earth at some point. So it is not as if you were in space. It is exactly the same as being in space. The only difference is that you cannot be in space too long, because after 20 seconds, the aircraft peaks towards the ground. And if you let it keep going like that, you eventually hit the ground and crash the aircraft, okay? I want to show you who has seen these zero-G experiments, or who has learned about them or heard about them.
I heard about them and seen videos of them, unlike the insect.
Was that the kind of video, if I may say? Let me move it. Okay, I hope I can skip the ads, please. Thank you. So what they did is, so they recorded a song, you know, OK Go recorded a song in zero gravity. So it begins kind of nicely. Let me go to full screen. And so let me go further and show you how things tend to go crazy towards the end. So that they're throwing balls at each other. And then I think at some point things start going out of control. And then even crazier. So, as you see, it's not because we are interested in space that we don't want to have fun, okay? And sometimes one of the best ways to do what we like is to go commercial. Of course, we have to repaint maybe the airplane after the show, but these kind of things tend to bring money. And I must tell you one thing, which is being fascinated about space and aerospace in general doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get rich. There is one exception, I believe Elon Musk seems to be getting rich with SpaceX, but this is more an exception than a rule. Let me move on with some of the things that we've done with zero gravity. So again, as I told you, I like to have like the complete project under my control, and I like my students to finish their projects within a reasonable amount of time. So that's why I've kept looking at atmospheric zero gravity as opposed to sending stuff to space myself. And so one of the things that we've been working on is what I call zero gravity autonomous flight. And what it was a quadrudder, so a drone that we equipped with radio control so that it could create zero gravity. And what you're going to see is a trajectory followed by the quadrudder as it goes to altitude, comes back down, as it simulates zero G, just like a large aircraft does. You see the machine going up, following what is effectively a parabolic trajectory, and then comes back down. But inside, it feels like the vacuum, okay? So that was another little experiment that we did. And we focus, of course, as scientists on the science for these systems. In particular, in this case, the science was mostly related to the autopilot of the machine. That is all the electronics that we programmed in, as opposed to building the machine itself. And so what I would like to tell you is that as a result, most of the work we did had a lot of computer science in it, a lot of programming in it, as opposed to necessarily building a lot of hardware, okay? Here's my dream at KAUST. So I have been a professor at KAUST for about a year now. It was a strange year, but I've nevertheless been able to meet with a lot of very nice students, and including a Saudi student to whom I showed the following picture. The idea would be to make the largest roller coaster in the world, and where that roller coaster could be used not only for people to have fun, but also to simulate zero gravity by having the roller coaster go up and down, following exactly the laws of gravity. Has anybody heard about or done roller coasting?
Yes, I've been on a few roller coasters.
And would you confirm with me that indeed you can feel like different levels of weight as
Uh,
you go up and down.
Yes, exactly.
So this roller coaster, if we manage to make one that would be big enough, okay, then we could get up to about 10 seconds of zero gravity inside. And I would very much like to do this. Unlike flying in a zero-G aircraft like I've shown you before, I think we could get such a roller coaster to pay for itself at the same price as what you pay for your roller coasters today. The technical obstacles are there. They're not enormously bad, and but they are there definitely. And but if we could ever build that machine, we would be really happy. And of course, it takes a certain amount of money to do. But again, I think if it's big enough, it may actually be more profitable than if we make it smaller. Are there any questions so far?
No, thank you.
Okay, let me move on then. Now I've told you how I trained and what I do for my teaching and research. I would like to tell you a little bit about some cool place to work at after you have done your studies. Okay, of course you can study with people like me, you can study in the United States, you can study in France, you can study in Saudi, of course. You know which universities teach aerospace in Saudi?
I guess King Abdulaziz University.
Which one? King Abdulaziz University, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is one.
Maybe King Saud, I don't know.
I don't know about King Saud, but I visited King Fahd Petroleum, KFUPM, University of Petroleum and Minerals. And they have also a nice program in aerospace engineering and with very nice people. So what I want to say is that you don't necessarily have to go far in order to get some education in aerospace systems, okay? And what I've seen is that, you know, everybody builds things and flies them, and this is a lot of fun, okay? And of course, as always, they also teach you all the math you want and everything, but I'll go back to this later. And let me first tell you, like, where are some cool places where you can work at right now in order to sort of do some really cool aerospace engineering. So I want to mention two places that are very special. One of them is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, named JPL, on the one hand, and on the other hand, what's called the Centre National d'Études Spatiales, named CNES in France. So I will tell you about the first one because I've been teaching in the United States for 30 years. And so I've heard about it as the absolute Mecca. I apologize for using this, the word Mecca in a Western sense, but it is sort of the place to go to at least once in your life if you are an aerospace engineer. Okay, so so it is called the Mecca of aerospace engineering. What they do is they build fantastic things. The latest that they built is this robot, this Mars robot. It is not the first robot to go to Mars. In fact, this one is currently traveling from the Earth to Mars. Okay, it is named Perseverance, and it is going to land sometime in April, if my memory is correct. Is anybody following this Mars mission, which is named Mars 2020? Well, I invite you to look it up the web, and what you will see is basically news of how this thing is going, and especially near the landing on Mars. I think that things will be particularly exciting. Again, that would be during your current school year. That would be in April, and since we are all stuck very much behind our screens, okay, you might as well go to the YouTube live streaming channel and listen in real time to the landing sequence for that machine. Now, one of the good things about it is that one of the people in charge of this rover mission is one of my former students. His name is Olivier Toupet. Okay, so he's a French guy who was a student of mine at MIT, and then he went to JPL to become literally quite a few things, and it was amazing. I was jealous of his job. He said, "Oh, first I was a Mars rover driver." So he was the guy who was moving the rover around. And when you know how much time it takes for information, for radio signals to go from the Earth to Mars, that is usually 12 minutes, and back another 12 minutes, you can see all the challenges of being a Mars rover driver. On the other hand, you can also imagine all the attention that Olivier would get in a social setting when he would say, "Oh, I'm a Mars rover driver," so you would suddenly become the most interesting person in the room. And he was thinking about making what we call bumper stickers, saying, "Oh, every day I commute to Mars," or "My other car is worth $1 billion," and things like that. And now he's become the person in charge of, well, it says here, Robotic Aerial Mobility Group Supervisor. And what does it mean? It means that he's the guy in charge of the little helicopter that is mounted on the rover and that will hopefully demonstrate for the first time ever flight on Mars. Okay, we don't know if there ever were birds on Mars, but as far as we know, this will be the first ever flying machine on Mars. And when you think about it, the consequences of this are sort of extremely important. I mean, can you believe we have now the human genius, if I may say, make its way to Mars? I mean, we're almost becoming magicians now. We're almost becoming like, I don't know how to call it. Like we are becoming the extraterrestrials. We don't need extraterrestrials to come and visit us. We already are the extraterrestrial invading other planets. Okay, and I just find this to be, in a way, totally fascinating. I want to add that why did I mention CNES, the Centre National d'Études Spatiales? Well, it's because you see, you have a lot of equipment here mounted on top of this Mars rover. Okay, and here and there, and these instruments contain optical observation equipment, that is cameras that can look at several how should I say that, several frequencies of light, can look at infrared, ultraviolet, visible. And this camera, this little instrument here, was actually built by the French CNES, okay? So there are two things that you can learn from that. Well, first of all, not everything happens in the United States of America. There are many other countries that are involved in it right now. And besides, in terms of leadership, besides the US, you have a lot of European institutions that are involved, also Japan, and of course, Russia, okay? But, and I will talk about it later, the Gulf countries are also very much involved in progressively develop things. And as space missions become increasingly expensive, Not one country can afford to do everything. And so that's how you end up having systems whereby part of the system is American, okay? Another part of the system is from France, and there are probably other parts of the system that are from other countries as well, okay? So the future of space will be in collaboration. It will be with collaborations between several countries, as opposed to just one country doing everything. All right. Personally, I'm so jealous that I was not involved with this helicopter. I like helicopters, in case you haven't noticed, and I really would have liked to work with this helicopter if I ever could have. Okay. But you know, you cannot do everything. I want to tell you about other places where you can work and have a lot of fun. Well, one of them is SpaceX. Okay, so it turns out that the Jet Propulsion Lab worked on not only launching rockets but also landing them. Okay, and they worked on techniques to guide these rockets from takeoff back to landing. They did lots of demonstration in the desert of California. And SpaceX took all the technology and used it to land its rockets back on the ground. Okay, so completely amazing. What you probably have seen by yourself are these rockets that land back on Earth after launching their spacecraft. Who has seen these recoveries?
I have.
What did you think of them?
I think they're
I think
pretty
they're amazing.
Yeah. So let me tell you one of the prides of my life. Well, let me introduce to you Lars Blackmore. He's the fellow showing the combustion chamber of a rocket here. He is the engineer who did the whole landing sequence at SpaceX. And I felt extremely lucky because the picture that was taken here was taken during a small workshop that I had organized in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in the United States of America. And I was so happy that he accepted. My luck was as follows. I invited him before he was able to make a successful landing. So at that time, he was still available, if I may say, to talk to people. By now, it's almost impossible to book him, if I may say. It's like, if you will, meeting with a singer before he's super well known and being able to talk to the singer and get signatures. And then after the singer has become super famous, then forget about it. Let me show you some of what they did. By the way, this is all a descendant of stuff that was designed at the Jet Propulsion Lab on the one hand and NASA on the other hand. So let's see what comes up. I hope it is what I want.
Engine ignition.
Yes.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket with science for today and for deep space exploration tomorrow. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers.
By the way, SpaceX is very good at talking about what it does. So you see, it goes to space.
Impact chill has begun. Telemetry nominal.
Then it will at some point get rid of its spacecraft and come back. And boom, lands itself on a barge away from the coast of Florida. Okay, so that was totally amazing. That was totally amazing. And again, there was the engineer, Lars Blackmore, who sort of enabled all this. I want to show you another another video. Okay, let me stop this thing. Well, actually, it's not bad. Another landing. Good. So awesome. Let me show you some other things that they've been able to do recently. And oops, sorry. I'm just going to be copying that link and putting it here. I think it's even more amazing. I don't know how they managed to do that. Look at this. Look at this video. That's a monster. And they're going to try and land this thing back, but in a way that is breathtaking. See how quickly the nozzles move? That is to stabilize the system. Okay, that is to make sure the rocket moves only in the right direction. But look at what they do afterwards. That's it, they cut all the engines. This thing is now beginning to fall down. Okay, it's like deep in the sky right now, and it's beginning to fall down. And look at how it manages to orient itself in order to fall down, but as slowly as possible. It offers the maximum profile to the atmosphere. Then look at what it does. It flips itself to stand up. And then it attempts to land. Look at what it does. So it slows down. And unfortunately, it crashes. I was reading the comments about that video, and I thought it was particularly interesting. What they said is, they said among the comments that, well, usually great failures are a fraction of a second away from great successes. And I thought this was such a nice lesson learned. Not everything went right, but almost everything went right. And the last thing they need to do is control their landing just a little bit better. And then they will have this giant rocket, this Starship, finally land and be able to recover itself. So I wish them good luck. Let me continue. And by the way, dear Nouran, how much time do you give me at this point?
However long you feel is necessary to go through the material.
I don't want to take too much of your time, so I will nevertheless show you a few more things that I want to cover. And one of them is what kind of activities are affordable or doable for you as high school students. Okay, I want to mention one that's just too much fun. And that is what we call Space Camp. Did anybody go to Space Camp? Nobody among you went to Space Camp yet?
No, unfortunately, but I attended like a space program last summer.
Yes? Where was that?
It wasn't like related to visiting any other place.
Okay.
It was done virtually.
Okay, so yes, this year was not a lucky year, but let's hope that, you know, we get lucky as soon as possible and everybody can go to Space Camp. Space Camp is one of these things that was imagined by NASA that is absolutely a lot of fun and especially designed for high schoolers. So what you do is you go to a space facility. There are many in the US, and they introduce you to everything, beginning with what it is to live in space. So they have a specially arranged building for that, to visiting famous sites. So in this case, this famous site is Huntsville, Alabama, where they have a copy of the Saturn V rocket that took Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and a third person to the moon. Okay, they have an actual disassembled Saturn V rocket inside. And of course, you can train and go through several experiences, like for example, going like in all directions at pretty high speeds. Okay, you can also see space shuttle artifacts. I think this one is the space shuttle that never went to space. I think it is Enterprise. Okay, and do a lot of other experiments. My daughter went there. She probably started around 10th grade, but then she went again to 11th grade. And in 12th grade, she actually went again as a student. And she did, instead of 1 week, she did 2 weeks because she said it was just too much fun. Okay, anybody can go to space camp, and you can register. As a Saudi citizen, and they will get you over. My daughter eventually she became an entertainer for space camp, and she welcomed a group of people from Australia. Okay, so I should mention this space camp is just hilarious, especially for those who are dreaming about becoming astronauts and want to get at least some feeling about it. Okay, they offer two options. One is the astronaut, the other is the engineer, but both of them are super fun. Okay, let me show you another things that you can get involved with. This is a website that some of my students have put together. And it is a little website that's named The Way to Weightlessness. And what we did was to start thinking about what kind of experiments you could design to do, to study what it is to be in zero gravity. Okay, so we trained, the students sort of, what they did is they made a little module, a very cheap module made out of wood, inside which there would be the experiment. And this module would be literally like thrown in the air. Okay, but it would be closed inside in such a way that it would be like a mini Vomit Comet or a mini zero-G aircraft. Of course, when you throw an object into the air, it is free falling and it doesn't fall for long. But nevertheless, it allows you to replicate certain very interesting phenomena that would be a lot more expensive to build if you go to space. And so some of the experiments we did are, I think we did some in combustion and some in physics. Let's see. Or some in combustion, some in fluid mechanics. So let's go to combustion. The combustion experiment tells you one thing. If you go to space and you're in zero gravity and you start burning a flame, you know how a candle burns that way? Okay, it creates a flame that goes upwards. Well, in space, it creates a flame that is spherical instead. So we started building this. We're not absolutely perfect, I will show you. But again, with a little module, including a GoPro camera and everything, you can actually build the experiment, and you can have a cell phone, or you can use either a you can be either use your own camera, your cell phone, or whatever to record what. And before I show you the whole experiment in the movie, here is what it does. So literally inside the box is a candle, okay? And we light it up, and it's zero gravity. So when we hold the box in our hands, that's the shape of the flame. And then as it goes into microgravity, that is, as we drop literally the box from the second or third floor of a building, you can see that the flame shrinks. The flame shrinks and eventually turns spherical. Okay, so the video is not as impressive as the pictures that we've taken, but we can always look at it. Okay, and you can see what it does. Okay, for real, and you will see it doesn't last long at all. So we light up the thing. You use very basic equipment, basically like barbecue stuff to light up the thing. We close the box and then we're gonna drop it. Oh, okay, that was it. Okay, it was very quick, okay? Because eventually light went off because it fell on the ground. That was a little bit too much for the poor thing. Okay, but you can replicate these experiments and then show yourself how the space environment or the zero-G environment influences the flames, okay? And I mean, it takes a little bit of training to get the right result, but eventually it's kind of very satisfactory to see how what was shown in space can be reproduced on Earth, okay? So you can do it. So there are lots of things you can do within 1 second that will replicate what happens on Earth. There was another experiment that I want to show you. And then I ask you for, I may ask you for, or make suggestions, okay? The second experiment is an experiment in fluid mechanics. You know how water falls on the ground and it falls like droplets, okay? And what they did is they built a little system to see how water behaves in zero gravity. And what happens in zero gravity is, so two things. I mean, here, and again, the video was not perfect, but again, it takes training to get things right. But when you're on Earth gravity, when you make like little drops falling on the ground, they just fall. One drop forms and falls. In zero gravity, the drop is like a bubble. It keeps inflating, okay? And it inflates instead of letting drops fall one after the other. So again, that's another experiment that you can actually do yourself, okay? And see for yourself the effect of zero gravity for literally, I don't know, maybe $100, 400 reals worth of equipment, okay? So if you will, some phenomena of science, including free falling and what happens when you're free falling, are completely accessible to you, okay? You, the students in a high school, okay? I can give you more information about that website if you're interested in building some of the things. And of course, I would be extremely interested in knowing what you managed to do, because what was done here was done by two awesome undergraduate students. But you know, it would be even better if we got feedback from one of you in the high school and say, yeah, I was able to get pretty much the same result, or I was not able to get the same result. Can you help me? All right. So I just want to show you more stuff. Here is the kind of things that people do when they're undergraduate students. So this is Fat Me here, okay? And everybody else here was especially interested in flying this rocket here. So that's a rocket that was designed to fly up to 1 mile high and then do things such as make a measurement, deploy a parachute, and then land back, okay? It was named the Mile High Yellow Jacket rocket. It was done at Georgia Tech. And by the way, it was done about 10 miles away from this space camp. You know, it was in Alabama. And here I have just a picture of the rocket as it takes off, okay? And I can tell you that it's kind of impressive to see these monsters take off. Okay, let me tell you what kind of training these people had. So there is me. I don't remember some of the people, but I remember this person. He's a computer scientist. Now, this person, she was a mechanical engineer. They met and they actually got married. This one was an aerospace engineer and he was the chief of the team. This guy was a very strange guy who was an aerospace engineer, a true genius that would never show up in class. But he was so smart that I gave him a good grade. He never showed up in class because he's the only one who showed me that he had understood what was going on, even though he did not even show up. Now, this guy, he was an aerospace engineer, and then he became a mathematician. Okay, so, and of course, he was looking especially at the math that comes behind objects that fly in space and are subject to Earth gravity or other planets' gravity. And then this guy here, he was also an aerospace engineer, but eventually decided to do his graduate studies in the Colorado School of Mines. So what do you think about somebody who is passionate about space and going to a school of mines? Can you guess why? Hello? Any guess? Any guess for why an aerospace engineer would go to a school of mines? Where are mines? Please, a volunteer. Let's see, let me pick somebody at random here. Aha, let's see. I thought I'd seen a name that I knew. But there's a person with a lovely flag. Any guess? Do you hear me, first of all? Does everybody hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, very good. I was suddenly a little panicked. Well, so usually you go to a school of mines to study mines, and mines are usually under the earth. I mean, they're under the surface. Well, it turns out that the Colorado School of Mines has a program in space mining. Okay, so the idea is you launch a spacecraft, for example, to the moon, the moon, for materials that you may bring back to Earth or that you may use in order to start building your moon colony. Okay, and so there is
Mr.
really
Eric,
a
sorry for interrupting.
Yes.
It's lagging for us.
Sorry? Oh, is it?
Lagging.
I don't understand. It is where?
Lagging, breaking.
Oh, it is breaking. How about if I speak a little slower? Is it better? Oh.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
better now.
I will speak a little slower. So what I said is that there is a school of mines in the US that starts space mining. So it studies how people can do mining on other planets or on other asteroids. And it's totally crazy. On the other hand, it is fun. And also, if it happens at the Colorado School of Mines, it could happen at the King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, okay? This is the same skills, okay? The only thing you do is you do it in space. Are you hearing me okay now?
Yes.
Yeah, we're hearing you.
So I want to show you that program because it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Let me go to the Colorado School of Mines for a few minutes and show you that. So Colorado School of Mines, space mining. There we go. See? Hello, go ahead. There is a space resource program, the first program in the world focused on educating scientists, engineers, economics, entrepreneurs, and policymakers in the developing field of space resources. So what it is they really want to literally mine space objects, okay? So for those of you who have an interest, who have been educated in mining, which is a very important activity in Saudi, there is an opportunity to pivot to space science right away, okay? For me, I think it's totally crazy, but I love it. I love it that it'd be totally crazy. You know, you might as well educate yourself for something deep in the future, okay? And this is, but I couldn't believe that somebody actually thought about it. It's great, okay? Let me go back to my presentation. And I want to show you other things. It won't take long from now on. One of the things that I asked the students to do is to give back. But first of all, I want you to see another student. So her name is Jana Al-Aslani. She works at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical School. And she's a junior student, a junior undergraduate student. She's also a private pilot. And so she is Saudi, definitely. And there she is building a micro spacecraft that will go to the moon. Okay, so I heard about her only 2 weeks ago as I was talking to my friends about, you know, if they knew any Saudi people currently studying space systems. And I actually got in touch with her. And she's a great person, okay? And here's what she's working on in a snapshot. So I'm gonna turn on the video. You can look at it, you can search for it if you go to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University.
Boldly going where no university student team has gone before, the surface of the moon. Team EagleCam is on a mission to take the world's ultimate selfie. Intuitive Machines has challenged us to develop a camera and communication system to fly aboard their Nova C lunar lander, to capture the first ever third-person views of a spacecraft touchdown. Experience the journey as we help pioneer technologies that will support a new era of crewed space exploration. Ready for an eagle's eye view of the moon?
So, as you see, really, there are lots of things you can do as undergraduate students. And so, as I said, I asked some of the students who are working at Georgia to try and give back a little bit. That is, have some students go back to high schools, especially high schools with limited means, and teach them what they do and tell them about what they could do. And we went to a school close to Georgia Tech, and we actually had fun telling them about space. And look at what they did. The high schoolers, so people like you, but probably with less money, not much money, okay, started designing bottle rockets on the one hand, and making like a movable, a robotic launch pad for this rocket. And we had a lot of fun with these little rockets. I don't know if such rockets are available in Saudi, but in the US, you can buy them very easily. And then you can get sort of big emotions, like when you launch this rocket. Well, okay, so that was me with my camera. I lost it. Okay, I couldn't get it. But that was something that I encouraged my undergraduate students to do. And as a result, a whole bunch of students in the Nibelung High School started getting inspired by this space adventure. Let me finish and say that my own daughter, Lucille, is a private pilot. She's a Georgia Tech aerospace major with a math minor, and she's a simulation software specialist for what is called the United Launch Alliance, ULA, okay? And she worked as a simulation person on a number of missions, a number of rocket launches. And I think the most fun one was the Solar Orbiter, because you may not see it here, but here is what the rocket looks like. It's a basic rocket with only one booster on the side. So it is an asymmetric rocket. And somehow I have never seen a rocket like that before in my life. Okay, so through my presentation, you have seen like a number of people who have done a number of things. I tried to give you some idea about, you know, my entire trajectory, if I may say, but also what other people have been doing, cool places where you can work in, stuff you can do now, okay, and also the kind of things that you may want to consider doing in the future. Never forgetting your math and your physics on the one hand, but also never forgetting to have fun and to do stuff yourself and to launch stuff yourself. This is very important, okay? What I want to say is that since 2018, you know that Saudi Arabia has had a space commission, and that as time goes on, the Space Commission is doing an increasing number of things. And last January 2nd, there came an article saying Saudi Arabia is counting down to unveil partnerships in the space sector. So what does that mean? That means that things are becoming very serious in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Space Commission has a budget of more than $1 billion, okay? And that it is your opportunity to get ready before everything starts and the whole space adventure happens in a place near you. So with that, I would like to thank you for your audience and take any questions you may have.
So we had some people submit questions before the webinar.
Yes.
So I'll just be asking those questions and then we can go ahead and ask the participants.
So let's go to the chat room. So let's see. So yes, there was a lag. I'm sorry for that.
So one person is asking that I'm interested in majoring in aerospace engineering in the US, but I'm worried that if I do, I won't be able to find work if I come back to Saudi Arabia. Will there be a much higher demand for aerospace engineers in KSA in the next 5 years or so? And how difficult is it to get a job in aerospace as a foreigner in the US?
So let me tell you. So that question is probably best answered by what I see, which is that there are a growing number of people interested in Saudi Arabia in space studies. Okay, so there was this person, Jana, whom I learned about it before, and that was, I think, she's totally excited about going back to Saudi and then giving her contribution to the space activity here. I would say that, you're concerned about not finding a job in Saudi after you do a degree in aerospace engineering should be the least of your worries. And let me explain you why. First of all, you should always do what you like. Okay, you should always do what you like. If you don't have fun in your study, it's really sad. You don't want your studies to be like just a big chore until you graduate. You want to have fun as soon as possible. Okay, so if aerospace is your calling, do it. Now, what does happen if you don't find a job? Well, first of all those who become super successful in life are those who did not know that certain things were impossible. Okay, they just decided to go for it anyway and then move on. And then, you know what? There's always a place where you can make your dreams happen. Okay, I'd be very, very surprised if Saudi did not have a job for you. In fact, there are already aerospace jobs in Saudi. They're mostly, so far, in the manufacturing of airplane parts. But it will only go up, okay? And I am doing my part by training the right people to do that. And I hope that you want to do your part by being trained. Another thing is that aerospace actually gets you to know many more things than just aerospace. The kind of training you get includes computer science, structures, materials, propulsion, aerodynamics, guidance and control, and all these disciplines are absolutely fantastic skills to apply anywhere you go. I've even had former students who went into banking. I say banking, okay? And you know why? It's because they're really good at modeling things, okay? At building mathematical models of anything they deal with, including financial processes, okay? And then, of course, there are other things to do, but the bottom line is that there is absolutely no issue with your undertaking aerospace engineering and finding a job there. And if it's not an aerospace job in Saudi, well, then what? Well, as I said, it will be in banking. It will be in tons of things that you may not know, but are totally achievable with an aerospace degree. Second, there was a question about being an aerospace person in the US. So it is true that being an aerospace engineer in the US, but having a non-US passport can slow you down, okay? It can slow you down because, the US is a little bit picky about its technology. And so it can be sort of, can restrict foreign people from accessing cool technologies. So what happens then? Well, the French guy whom I showed you was working on the Mars rover and the Mars helicopter, didn't have a passport, a US passport. He started up right there. Why? Because he was good. And that's really what they care about. In fact, you know, America will say no up until you show them that you're good. And they say, oh, maybe we can arrange something. Okay, that's one. The second thing is that some students, what they do is once they like aerospace engineering, they realize that they have, if you will, better chance to work on fun projects if they go for the master's or for the PhD. Okay, and all these added years of presence in the US count towards you're getting what you really need in order to be accepted pretty much in any company, which is the green card. Okay, so that's another mechanism that allows many to establish themselves in the United States, and I certainly was one of them. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Dr. Eric. We also have another question submitted by a student. They're asking about the relationship between AI and space and what are the available job options in that area? So
that is a very interesting question because it discusses the relationship there is between what I would call brand new sciences and extremely expensive technology. Anything that flies is extremely expensive. So what people don't want is to lose their investment. And because they don't want to lose their investment, they tend to be a little bit more critical before they allow new technology to enter their field. And so what you will find is, for example, that the Mars rover, one of which is already on Mars, the other one being on its way to Mars, is not necessarily equipped with the latest and greatest in AI. The vehicle is driven very often by humans, and the technologies that are there are technologies that existed way before AI was named as such. And those technologies are what we call very safe, meaning they are true and tested. So as a result, you see a little bit of resistance against using AI, for example, to move a Mars rover around. If you have a Mars rover that is stuck in the sand or stuck against a stone, it can be a nightmare. The price of the Mars rover is not only the rover, it's the rocket that took it there, it's the whole set of people who've been monitoring the thing. And so it easily costs on the order of $1 billion. One opportunity you have to use, you can use for AI to do its job, nevertheless, is to use AI, for example, to do image analysis, to look for interesting features inside the many pictures that are taken by Mars rovers. AI is also used, for example, to detect new space objects taken by telescopes, okay? Things that a human would have a lot of problem finding is sort of found automatically by going back to hundreds of thousands of pictures and then detecting the one object that could not be seen by humans. And that's how many asteroids have been identified recently. They were there, nobody noticed them, but they were there. And only AI techniques were able to find them. So what you will see in the future is AI will progressively make more of its way into the operation of spacecraft, and also, by the way, airplanes. But this is still what I would call a very active field of research. And sure enough, the area of safe artificial intelligence is one that people spend a lot of time on, especially research people. I myself do some of that work, and I try to find easy solutions for AI and, in general, sophisticated algorithms to make their way into spacecraft, aircraft, etc. But it is still research in the making.
Abdul Wahab is asking if KAUST offers any master's or PhD programs focused on astronomy, aerospace, or aerospace engineering.
So let me give you some insight about all this. Okay, so yes, KAUST is offering at least master's and PhD in some areas of aerospace engineering. For example, I specialize in systems. Other people specialize in what's called structures. The last I heard, the Department of Mechanical Engineering at KAUST wanted to rename itself Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, because a lot of what they do is in fact related to aerospace. As I said, structure is one of them, but another one is combustion. How do you burn fuel in order to get the maximum thrust is another one. AI is another one. As I said, universities mostly specialize in research, not operating systems. So we try and look at the future. I would say that, so you have a lot of possibilities of familiarizing yourself with aerospace engineering techniques at KAUST, even though we still don't have an aerospace engineering department per se. That said, I have spent 30 years studying and doing my job in aerospace engineering departments, and I don't think I will change very much as I now become a professor of electrical, computer, and mechanical engineering, because you need all of these in order to make a system go to space.
Yazan is raising her hand. Feel free to open your mic and ask the question.
Okay, so my question is, so how is the so my question is, how is the Mars helicopter going to deal with the 24-minute delay?
Going to deal with the, how is the Mars helicopter is going to deal with what?
The input and output delay.
The input to output what? Sorry, I did not get your word.
So yeah, there is a delay between input and feedback.
Yes. So
well, how is it going to deal with that, since it's a helicopter?
So it's a helicopter that we fly all on its own. So nobody will be there to tell it what to do. You're right. If there was any signal going back to Earth and then going from Earth to the helicopter, you would have a problem. So the helicopter is doing everything autonomously. And I think the flight is supposed not to last more than 1 minute. The whole idea is just to show you can get a bird's eye view of Mars. And it also outlines some of the very important things about Mars, which is, I believe that it would be very hard for a human to get there. It's much easier to send robots. How can we make robots increasingly autonomous so that they can take care of themselves, because we will always be 12 minutes at least behind them. So they have to take care of themselves without the humans. And I think your question is excellent because it actually dives into that deeper question, which is, are robots Martians now? Are they actually becoming the citizens of Mars? Will humans ever have the opportunity to robots could do without us? And so do an increasingly good job, give more and more autonomy to the machines that go to Mars. And I see that there was a that he said, I am lagging again. Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Other questions?
Lena, feel free to open your mic.
Thank you for allowing me to ask. My question is, what is the possible future of intertwining both nuclear energy with spacecrafts and rocket launching? Like, will there be more nuclear rockets in the future?
So thank you for asking this question. You know that nuclear propulsion has been discussed over and over and over again. It is possible. Now, for some reason, there is a great fear of anything bearing the name nuclear on Earth. As a result, what you see is nuclear energy not moving forward, but sometimes you might feel it's moving backwards. Countries such as France had an enormous nuclear program that was producing 85% of its electricity using nuclear energy. And now it is back down to about 70%. And it closes many nuclear facilities. So the question is, in that environment, how do you promote nuclear propulsion? To promote nuclear propulsion, you need nuclear engineers. To have nuclear engineers, you need nuclear engineering department. But those are, at least in the US, definitely not the most popular departments. And so you might be wondering, should I go to nuclear engineering and then becoming a nuclear propulsion person, or what? And my answer is a little bit the same as what I was saying concerning aerospace engineering. If you believe in nuclear and nuclear something, including nuclear propulsion, if you like it, if you like the field, just go for it. It doesn't matter what other people think. That is very important. It does not matter what other people think. What matters the most is that you have fun, you study what you want to study, and there will be very little impact of what you study on what you will be doing later. If the nuclear propulsion jobs are not there when you graduate, there will be plenty of other jobs that will be most happy to learn that you have been trained as a nuclear engineer and, for example, know a lot about safety, okay? And that includes aerospace engineering itself. Most of what has been learned in terms of safety for aerospace engineering has been learned from nuclear engineers, but also tons of other jobs, including, as you might guess, what Aramco does.
Thank you so much. I'm actually aiming to major in physics, especially in nuclear or particle physics. So I just thought maybe I do not want to work with particle accelerators with the rest of my life, and I would try to make a change by working in the space sector. So yeah, that was the main reason for asking that kind of question.
Let me tell you something funny. So one of the biggest aerospace research programs at Stanford was a program related to measuring some effect of general relativity theory on the behavior of gyroscopes. They built this spacecraft that was an absolutely crazy spacecraft that was a mix of physics professors and aerospace professors. And they said, we're going to try and show experimentally this thing. And they spent the next 30 years designing the system that would go into orbit and measure this effect. The spacecraft was named Gravity Probe B. That spacecraft was just amazing. And guess what? Some of the students needed a particle accelerator to do what they needed to do as part of this program. The professor was a professor of aerospace engineering, and he said, we need a particle accelerometer. The student said, okay, boss, what budget do you give us? And he said, $200. The students looked at him as if he were crazy, saying, you're nuts. I mean, we're never going to find that. Can you give us more? And he said, no. So here's what the aerospace engineers did. They went to the physics departments and they started looking into the trash cans. And they found an old particle accelerometer that was not working. They figured out what was wrong in the particle accelerometer. They fixed it with $19, only $19. And they brought it back victoriously to the aerospace professor saying, we beat your budget by an order of magnitude. So you see that sometimes you might be in a position where you work with particle accelerometers, but with a little bit of imagination, you might end up becoming critical to a space mission of great importance itself. You never know where things can take you. I personally love physics majors because physics majors are really good at building their own instruments. And physics majors usually really understand their physics, their mechanics, and as a result, work with physical systems extremely well. So I think that if physics is what you want to do, go ahead and do it. And maybe take a minor in some kind of engineering skill, mechanical, aerospace, electrical, and you will find it so easy that you will not only enjoy it, but on top of that, you won't even feel that you're spending more time because you're doing a minor or a second major in those disciplines.
And the story is so interesting and inspiring. Thank you so much for your answer.
Sure.
Does anyone have any other questions?
So let me give you something. Here is my my contact information. Okay, so you can always email me any of your questions, and it will be my absolute pleasure to answer your questions. I love hanging out with young people from Saudi. It's also my way to discover your beautiful country. And so, again, it will be my pleasure to answer your questions. I can also send a copy of my presentation to Ms. Nuran, if that can be useful to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eric.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. I was about to ask you for an email, but thank you.
Please go ahead. Please go
No,
ahead
no,
and send me
I
email.
mean, I wanted to ask you, like, can you give me your email? But you just showed it here.
Great.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor. We learned
Well,
a lot from you.
and again, we can have other discussions. I can share more experience, how I've dealt with various students. But I think that, again, I encourage you first and foremost to have fun and do what you like, okay? And what you do now will always find a use in space if space is eventually where you want to be, okay?
Thank you, and I hope
All right.
everyone has a very good night.
Okay, have a good night too. I'm very impressed. It's almost 9 o'clock now. And so I will get back to my business and again, be waiting for your emails. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much, everyone.